And then, after the crash, the shamefaced return to the United States, the brief period of couch surfing and abject hopelessness, the near divorce and reconciliation, and his relocation to Portland, the story of the seizure of the store he'd owned with Chris suddenly broke through thanks to a wildly popular YouTube documentary. Of course, within any group of people, outliers will speak out. Gods bless them for their contrarianism, some hostile to the popular consensus on principle, others seeing the opportunity for attention by taking the wildest view. But these were so few and far between, Benjamin and Chris were generally able to maintain hopeful attitudes as the story went viral. They entertained each other by articulating the most absurd conspiracy theory, that they'd somehow concocted an elaborate plan to have their own store taken from them, ruin their own lives, try and fail to relocate to Spain, and have to restart their lives and marriage from scratch, all in an effort to sell 2 or 3 copies of Benjamin's books to the YouTubers, purchasing them to sound prepared when they had them on to talk about something completely unrelated to Benjamin's literary ambitions. As Benjamin told a fellow small press publisher colleague, if the whole thing had been a marketing strategy, it was the worst he could think of, especially in an age when people could make whole careers out of spewing hate speech. Getting attention for being awful was easy. Getting attention by tricking a corporation into stealing from you, somehow engineering a situation where they would threaten to make your life shit and would quite successfully follow through before being found out, that was not winning at 4D chess. It was shooting dice in an alley with the wrong people and getting mugged. Chris and Benjamin could have been offended someone would suspect they'd engineered the mugging to get their bloodied faces in the newspaper, but the whole notion was so absurd, they chose to laugh about it. And predictably, the same people who watched a mugging and saw a plot interpreted Benjamin and Chris's bloodied smiles as more evidence. Kurt Vonnegut described this extreme degree of absurdity best in Slaughterhouse-Five. So it goes. In the midst of this attention to their case, Chris heard from another YouTuber. Chris recognized his name because their kid was a huge fan of his work, and people in the comments on the original documentary kept referencing him. So when his message popped up in her phone, she surprised her coworkers by shouting, "Oh shit!" Benjamin hadn't heard of the gentleman before, so he went back and watched a bunch of his videos to prepare himself. When Chris and Benjamin sat for their first interview, and the host was generous enough to include their kid because they really wanted to get to meet him, he convinced them to share all the photographic evidence they'd been holding on to for their lawsuit against Megacorp. Then he asked them not to mention they would be on his show and to keep the pictures close until his video appeared. Benjamin's intrinsic inclination to overshare at every opportunity chafed at being even temporarily silenced, but he agreed to the professional courtesy, though he couldn't help but ask a few more times than he should have when the video would go live. The YouTuber, both because he made extremely high-quality, thoroughly produced videos, and because details kept coming to light over the course of production, had to delay the release and give up a lot of sleep to get the thing put together. And then it dropped. Even as it was siloed in the YouTuber's Patreon, it garnered a great deal of attention. But when the bay doors opened, and the revelations encased in all that carefully manufactured production smashed into the surface of the platform's 2.58 billion monthly active users, it exploded. 300,000 people watched in the first hour. 1.5 million in the first 6 hours. More than 5 million people saw it in the first 2 days. Benjamin's own response video garnered more than 50,000 views in the same 2 days, and the outpouring of support overwhelmed him. Like in Spain, total strangers recognized Chris on the street, but an order of magnitude more frequently. It seemed every time Benjamin talked with a friend, they knew about the situation already, sometimes with details he hadn't learned yet.